Why James Cameron's Avatar is Not Anti-Military, Part 3. In Part 2 of this lecture, we have already spent a great deal of time discussing in much detail the problem involving complaints of James Cameron's Avatar being anti-military. And we have already discussed the reasons contrary to these claims. In this next part of this lecture, we will elucidate in much detail the many positive military approaches portrayed in the film. First, we will delve into how SecOps, the military in Avatar, handles the hostile environment of Pandora. At around the start of the film, the first thing you will come across is the human SecOps military. It is the very first agent of change introduced in the film, and what you will see should cast aside any misconceptions about America's armed forces being misrepresented. Hopefully. Firstly, it's important to note that the SecOps military force and its head in charge, Colonel Miles Quaritch, take their Pandoran surroundings very seriously. And I mean seriously. You see, they are dealing with an atmosphere that is toxic to their lungs, not to mention flora, fauna, and native inhabitants that have the potential to become hostile to them to the point of deadliness. Colonel Quaritch and the SecOps military handle their environment by taking the utmost precautions to survive it. If you take a look at the briefing scene, you'll find the colonel giving a safety demonstration for the new mercenary troops and base personnel on their first tour. One of the most memorable quotes from the colonel comes during the briefing, in which he says to the personnel, "You are not in Kansas anymore, you are on Pandora." Here he reminds, no, not merely reminds, he impresses upon the newbies on the base that Pandora is not a fantasy land, although its exotic looks will no doubt give that impression. Rather, Pandora is a dangerous, hostile world they are facing, and if they do not take any precautions at all, they will fall victim to its deadly Pandoran environment, its flora, its fauna, and its humanoid native inhabitants. In short, as Colonel Quaritch once put it, if you get soft, Pandora will shit you out dead with zero warning. This means that the civilian personnel and troops on base have to be sober and alert when they are in unfamiliar and hostile territory. They do not have the luxury of having primarily the mindset of a child taking a tour on a theme park, and I think the film impresses this concept into our minds very well. We will now delve into our next subtopic of our second main point, which concerns the positive military approaches of the film's main protagonist, Jake Sully. And here we will delve into the very qualities that make the film, in the words of James Cameron, a tribute to the caliber of the people created by the Marine Corps. In fact, I would even go far as to say that the qualities of Jake Sully actually epitomizes or embodies the warrior-scholar mentality that the Marine Corps embraces, as Colonel Brian Salas pointed out in his letter to the Marine Corps Times. We will start from the beginning of the film. In the first half, we see Jake Sully fending for his life with his ingenuity. It all starts when he messes around with the fauna of Pandora. Then an angry beast chases him and he gets stranded. The authorities that Jake Sully was tasked with providing security escort are not allowed to conduct night searches on his behalf, due to the Pandoran dangers. So he has to fend for his life under cover of darkness, using the small available resources he has. He battles viper wolves in the middle of the night before being rescued by the Na'vi princess Neytiri of the Omaticaya tribe. When at last he is found and brought to Home Tree, the ancestral home of the Omaticaya, he is female mentored by Princess Neytiri on the ways of the Na'vi. He studies and learns from their culture, in spite of the fact that his secret main objective is to spy on the Omaticaya, but he learns nonetheless. Prior, during, and after the assault on Home Tree by the SecOps military, Jake then has to go through a messy conflict between both the Na'vi and his fellow humans until he is an outcast of both parties. But he eventually decides to side with the Na'vi and take command after taking on the challenge of taming a large flying beast called the Great Leonopteryx. At this point, the Na'vi then look up to him for leadership. But, rather than throwing his weight around, he shows respect to his tribe's chain of command by enlisting the most senior warrior to his aid. And during the final battle, Jake Sully leads, inspires, and coordinates the Na'vi. To be a little clearer so that nobody's confused, I'm going to say that Jake Sully leads all the Na'vi in battle. The Na'vi is made up of many tribes, and Jake, as part of the Amaticaya tribe, is leading the Na'vi. Well, this concludes the second part of this lecture. In our next part, we will discuss in detail our new perspective of James Cameron's Avatar.